Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. In Myanmar, tens of thousands of anti-coup protesters have gathered again across the country, day after the killing of 2 people in clashes with the police. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the use of deadly violence in the country. Facebook has also deleted the main page of Myanmar's army, saying it coordinated harm and incited violence. Iran says its decision to end snap inspections by UN inspectors does not breach the 2015 nuclear deal. In an interview, Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif said the US must lift all sanctions on Tehran and return to the deal. Meanwhile, IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi has met with Iran's nuclear chief Ali Akbar Salehi in Tehran to find a mutually agreeable solution. In the USA, United Airlines flight has survived a crash scare after suffering a right engine failure shortly after takeoff from Denver. The Federal Aviation Administration said the plane scattered debris but returned safely to the airport. The Boeing 777-200 airplane carrying 231 passengers and 10 crew members was bound for Honolulu. It said there were no immediate reports of any injuries on the ground. The global number of COVID-19 cases has crossed 111 million, with 2.4 million deaths. In Brazil, the virus has claimed another 1,200 lives overnight, with nearly 246,000 fatalities since the pandemic began. Meanwhile, Pakistan has reported 38 deaths and more than 1,300 infections in the last 24 hours. Nationwide, there are over 12,600 deaths and 571,000 infections so far. These were the top stories. News in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. We'll start from Myanmar, where tens of thousands of anti-coup protesters have gathered again across the country the day after the killing of 2 people in clashes with the police. Earlier, police arrested a famous actor for opposing the takeover. Several thousand people protested in Yangon, Mitkuyina, Monyaba and Bagan and chanted slogans against the military rule. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the use of deadly violence in Myanmar. Taking to Twitter, he called on all parties to respect election results and return to civilian rule. Meanwhile, Facebook has also deleted the main page of Myanmar's army, saying it coordinated harm and incited violence. The military has been unable to quell the demonstrations and a civil disobedience campaign against the detention of Aung San Suu Kyi. Now, Iran says its decision to end snap inspections by UN examiners does not breach the 2015 nuclear deal. In an interview, Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif said the US must lift sanctions on Tehran to rescue the pact. Zarif criticized the Biden administration for continuing the maximum pressure policy of Donald Trump. He reiterated that Tehran will not yield to Washington's pressure. Meanwhile, the International Atomic Energy Agency chief has met Iran's nuclear chief in Tehran. Rafael Grossi is in Tehran to find a solution to continue essential verification activities. Tehran is also studying an EU proposal for an informal meeting of the JCPOA members and the US. Now, in India, farmers say the government is exploiting COVID-19 restrictions to halt their activities and meetings in Maharashtra. Talking to the media, union leader Rakesh Tikait said the same ploy was used against the protesters opposing discriminatory citizenship laws. In Chandigarh, thousands of people participated in the Grand Meet of Farmers. Meanwhile, a farmer rode a tractor over his ripe wheat crop in Uttar Pradesh to register protests against the new laws. Speaking on the incident, Dick Kayet warned more farmers would do the same if the centre does not listen to their demands. The growers also slammed the government's fuel price hike, saying it slashes the minimum support price for their produce. Now, the global number of COVID-19 cases has crossed 111 million, with 2.4 million deaths. In Brazil, the virus has claimed another 1,200 lives overnight, with nearly 246,000 fatalities since the pandemic began. More of the latest regarding the pandemic in this report. France's number of new coronavirus cases increased for the third day in a row compared with a week earlier. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says all adults in the UK will be offered a first dose of a COVID-19 vaccine by the end of July. More than 17 million people in the UK have now had the first dose of a vaccine. Meanwhile, a High Court judge has ruled UK Health Secretary Matt Hancock acted unlawfully. The ruling said Hancock failed to publish multi-billion-pound COVID-19 government contracts within the 30-day period required by law. Meanwhile, Australia is pushing hard to get a majority of the population inoculated. Prime Minister Scott Morrison set the precedent by getting the jab and urging the Aussies to follow amid scepticism and hesitation regarding vaccines.
I have, by my own example today, joined by the Chief Nurse and Midwifery and the Chief Medical Officer of our country, together with those Australians who are in the top priority of this vaccination program, to say to you Australians, it's safe, it's important. Join us on this Australian path that sees us come out of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Over in Morocco, authorities have detected a further 21 cases of the virus. Israel has reported a 95.8% drop in COVID-19 infections among those who have received 2 doses of Pfizer's vaccine. Iran has closed several crossing points at its border with Iraq to curb the spread of the COVID-19 UK variant. Kuwait's Civil Aviation Authority has extended an entry ban for non-Kuwaiti citizens until further notice. Citizens are still allowed to enter, but they must spend a week in quarantine at a hotel and another week at home. Coronavirus cases are rising in a number of Indian states, including Punjab, Maharashtra, Kerala and Madhya Pradesh. The rise in infections comes amid the detection of a new virus variant in Maharashtra. Now in Pakistan, 38 more people have died of COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. This has pushed the death toll to 12,601. The Health Ministry has reported 1,329 new infections overnight. The ministry says over 571,000 people have tested positive for the virus so far, out of which more than 534,000 have recovered. The ministry said at present there are more than 24,000 active cases in Pakistan. Meanwhile, the National Command and Operations Centre is expecting to receive another 5.6 million vaccines by end of March. According to NCOC data, 2.8 million doses from COVAX are expected as early as the first week of next month. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has reiterated support for the Afghan peace process. Blinken held a telephone call with the head of Afghan Peace Council, Abdullah. In a statement, the U.S. State Department said the secretary thanked Abdullah for his vital work for the peace process. It added Blinken expressed U.S. resolve to support a just and durable political settlement and permanent ceasefire in Afghanistan. The two officials exchanged views on the second round of Afghan peace talks. They also discussed the U.S. review of the situation in Afghanistan and a way of accelerating the peace process. Abdullah thanked the Secretary of State and Washington for their support for Afghanistan. Moving on now, a Russian court has convicted Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny of defamation. The verdict comes hours after another court upheld an order for him to serve over 2 years in prison in another case. The judge said Navalny was guilty of defaming a World War II veteran. The veteran was among a group of Russian Navalny called traitors for appearing in a pro-Kremlin video. Prosecutors have asked for Navalny to be fined the equivalent of $13,000. Earlier, a court rejected Navalny's appeal against the jailing of 4, violating the terms of a suspended sentence. Turkey says its common interests with the United States outweigh the differences. In a televised speech, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said Ankara wants improved cooperation with Washington. Erdogan said he wants to strengthen cooperation through a long-term perspective on a win-win basis. He said Turkey will continue to do its part in a manner worthy of the bilateral strategic partnership ties. Erdogan added the relations between Ankara and Washington had been seriously tested recently. Ties between the two NATO allies have been strained over Turkey's purchase of the S-400 defense system and US support for a Kurdish militia in Syria. Now moving to Yemen, where the government has accused the Houthis of using civilians as human shields in their renewed offensive on Marib Governorate. Earlier this month, the rebels resumed a push to seize control of the region from Yemeni government forces. Military officials say over the past 24 hours, 12 government and 20 fighters have been killed in clashes. The official said there has been no let-up in the fighting. Earlier, rebels leader Abdul Aziz bin Habtour urged the Yemeni people to support the Houthis' efforts to seize Marib. The fighting in Marib has raised fears for thousands of displaced civilians sheltering in camps in the surrounding desert. The city lies close to some of Yemen's richest oil fields, and its capture would be a major prize for the rebels. Now, voting has begun to elect Niger's next president. This marks the country's first democratic transition of power since independence from France in 1960. The run of votes pits outgoing President Mahamadou Issoufou's chosen successor Mohamed Bazoum against former President Mahamadou Osman. Bazoum beat Osman in the first round of the polls in December last year by more than double the votes. The 71-year-old Osman was Niger's first democratically elected president and ousted in a 1996 military coup. Now, in the USA, United Airlines flight has survived a crash scare after suffering a right engine failure shortly after takeoff from Denver. The Boeing 777 carrying 231 passengers and 10 crew members was bound for Honolulu. More in this report.
For passengers taking the early weekend flight from Colorado to Hawaii, it was going to be a smooth trip. However, that soon changed. The flight suffered a right engine failure shortly taking off from the ground. The Federal Aviation Administration said the plane scattered debris but returned safely to the airport. It said there were no immediate reports of any injuries on the ground.
It took off like a normal flight, and I'm kind of afraid to fly anyway, and we got in the plane and I thought, this looks like a nice plane. It's clean, it looks newish. I was like, this will be fine, easy going. And we started and everything started well, and then all of a sudden it was just this big, you could just feel it like boom, and you could hear it, and we started shaking.
The Aviation Administration added that the National Transportation Safety Board will investigate the incident. Police are urging locals not to touch or move the debris, as they are required for the probe.
This park, on a day like today when it's not as cold as it was last weekend, we could have hundreds of people here. And the fact that we are still not getting reports of any injuries is absolutely shocking at this point. It's amazing.
The 26-year-old 777 was powered by 2 Pratt & Whitney engines. Boeing has declined to comment on the crash scare, referring queries to United Airlines. Investigators will focus on what caused the engine on the plane to fail and will look at whether a fan blade failed.
Well, that was scary now. In the years, 3 people have been killed and 2 others injured in a gun store shooting in the suburb of New Orleans. The police said the shooter was among those killed. It said the shooter struck 2 people in the shop before he was shot dead as the staff and customers fired back. The police added 2 wounded were hospitalized in stable condition. None of the victims were immediately identified as the investigation into the incident is underway.
This is a really developing scene, so I'm going to be very brief on what I can give you at this point in time. We had one initial shooter here at the scene who hit 2 victims inside the location. Both of them have been pronounced deceased here at this location. It appears that several individuals ended up engaging that original suspect, whether inside the location or out here in the parking lot. We have a total of 3 deceased, including the 2 that were inside.
Well, we still have news for you in this news bulletin, but after a short break, stay with us. Welcome back now. Moving on with the news stories. In Spain, 9 people, including 3 minors, have been arrested after a police clash with demonstrators in Catalonia. Violence flared as over 6,000 gathered in the Spanish city for a 5th night over the jailing of rapper Pablo Hasél. Police said 9 people were wounded, 2 of whom were taken to hospital. Protesters threw bottles at police, set fire to containers and smashed up shops in Barcelona. More than 60 have been arrested in the protest so far. Hasél has been sentenced to 9 months in prison for his anti-establishment raps. Now, a Pakistani peacekeeper has died in Sudan in an accident in the South Darfur region. Lance Naik Tahir Ikram was a member of the police unit of the United Nations African Union mission in Darfur. Pakistan's UN mission said Ikram was driving a mission truck when he faced the accident. In a message, Pakistan's UN ambassador Muneen Akram said Ikram's services will be forever remembered. Pakistan has lost 157 personnel and 24 officers during UN peacekeeping missions in the world's most turbulent regions. Now, in India, 5 more bodies have been recovered from the flash flood hit areas in the Himalayas. Police say the death toll from the glacier burst in northern UTCHAND state has now risen to 67. Search and rescue efforts are underway as 137 people are still missing. Authorities said the bodies were recovered from the Tapovan Dam project site, which was damaged by the avalanche. Part of the glacier near the Nanda Devi mountain broke off on 7th of February, unleashing a devastating flood. Locals say the glacier broke after nuclear devices abandoned on the mountain by the Indian military in 1965 exploded. Now, Italian Coast Guards have rescued 45 migrants after their ship capsized 15 miles south of Lampedusa Island. In a statement, the Coast Guard said they are searching for around 5 to 10 people believed to be missing. The migrants were rescued after the Coast Guards heard them shouting for help in the darkness. Italy is the main route for migrants departing mostly from Tunisia and Libya to reach Europe. Russia has registered the first case of transmission of H5N8 strain of avian flu to humans. The authorities say they have reported the matter to the World Health Organization. A senior health official said 7 workers have been infected at a poultry farm in southern Russia. They said there is no sign yet of transmission between humans. In recent months, outbreaks of the H5N8 strain have been reported in Europe and the Middle East, but only in poultry. The vast majority of cases are spread by migrating wild birds, so producing countries keep their poultry indoors. Feeling frustrated and stressed out? Well, Brazilians can now vent their anger and fury in the newly opened Rage Room. Let's find out more in this report.
Inside a warehouse on the outskirts of Sao Paulo, people can swing giant hammers at old televisions, computers and printers, demolishing the machines and shredding the glass into tiny pieces. This is not an exhibition of insanity, but merely a way to release pent-up stress and anger amid a seemingly everlasting pandemic. All people have to do is pay a fee of $4.64.
This is good for those who live here. It takes me almost 2 hours to get to work and 2 hours back. You have that feeling also during this pandemic, worrying about your health, but it's great to come here and release some adrenaline and pent-up feelings.
The owner of the business says he has received a fair number of customers since the opening of the Rage Room a month ago.
Acredito que foi o melhor momento para a gente poder montar.
I think it was the best moment to be able to set this up here in Side Tiradentes, related to everything that people are going through, a lot of anxiety, stress. Sometimes people miss work or even work a lot at home. I believe this here is like an escape at the moment.
Customers say releasing their stress in their age rooms stops them from taking it out on other people, like family and friends.
Visitors to the world's largest snow maze in Canada will find something unexpected as they're getting lost. More space. Let's find out in this report.
After a period of uncertainty about whether it would be allowed to open due to the pandemic, the world's largest snow maze in Manitoba is once again welcoming customers. The larger layout and staggering the times visitors can enter the maze are a nod to social distancing guidelines. The owner, Andrew Mass, says the maze is 91% bigger this year.
In 2019, we applied for the title of the world's largest snow maze, which we got in February. And this year, just with COVID and everything, we wanted to make it bigger.
For many who have been quarantined in their homes and dealing with travel restrictions, navigating the maze is a chance to stretch their legs and experience a little adventure.
We love outdoor entertainment. It kind of just fell into place. We run the corn maze, of course, in the summer, and then the Sunflower Expo as well during that time. And then as we get to fall, we have the Haunted Forest, and then we're like, we need to do something in the winter time. And I guess we love mazes as well, so there we go. Now we're into snow mazing.
For Mass, expanding the maze was no small undertaking. The massive labyrinth is 240 feet by 240 feet and took 6 weeks to build due to unusually warm weather.
Now, in business stories, Gulf markets are trading mixed today, demonstrating subdued activity in the absence of major triggers for a bearish mood. Abu Dhabi Securities Exchange is trading marginally higher, getting its biggest boost from banking stocks. The Dubai financial market added close to 0.5%, bouncing back from 3 days of consecutive drops due to low corporate earnings. Bahrain shares have edged down slightly after Arab Banking Corporation that dropped 1%. Kuwait's premier index is trading somewhat flat, with financial and industrial stocks pulling it in opposite directions. Meanwhile, Qatar Exchange has gained fractionally, with Qatar National Bank adding 0.5%. And now let's have a look at the weather updates from around the world. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.